Lovelies. Today I'm going to show you how I make animal ears for cosplay. There's a few different kinds you can make. I made these for Ari. These were my first pair, so they're not obviously the best. I also made these little short round ones for Revtalia, and these giant cat ears for Ichigo. There's many different styles, and you can kind of just have fun with it. So to begin, take a sheet of paper, and for cat ears, I'm just going to draw a tortilla chip shape. It's kind of simple, pretty easy. You can kind of change it up on variation depending on what you want to do, but I just went for a simple triangle. Next, cut it out with some scissors. Simple. If you're doing something other than a cat ear, make sure to look at a reference for the animal because all shapes are different. Next, I'm going to fold my ear and try it on to make sure it's right how I want it. I ended up cutting it down because I thought it was a little too chunky. Next, I'm going to use some cheap craft foam. You can find this stuff anywhere, honestly. And I'm going to trace my tortilla chip onto the craft foam. For these ears, you're going to need about 4 pieces because you're going to double them up for the inside. Once all your pieces are drawn, just cut them out, and next you'll be gluing them together. Once your 4 pieces are cut out, now it's time to glue them. Also, don't mind that I have more than 4 pieces. I was going to make more ears and gave up halfway through. But for glue of choice, I usually use contact cement. You can use hot glue or whatever is available, but I find contact cement works best when working with foam. So you're just going to put the contact cement on either side of your foam tortilla chip, and then you'll just smush them together. Next, it's time to cut your fur. So when cutting fur, make sure that your fibers go up when you're cutting, because any other way would be kind of strange and it just doesn't work as well. So make sure to trace down your tortilla chip pattern onto your fur. You don't have to use the super bright pink Sharpie. It's all I have, and quite frankly, I like the color. If you're using a sewing machine, make sure to draw a seam allowance. Next, you're going to use a box cutter or X-Acto knife to cut it out. Scissors would only cut the fur and the little fibers off, and that won't be very good. If you can't find the color fur you want, or you're too lazy to go out and get some like me, here's how to dye your fur. I'm going to use a flat brush because this one works best, and some plastic bowls, or you can use cups. I'm going to change these little white furs into green. I was going for a forest theme with these ears, so I mixed a little bit of green with some blue and some lighter green, and just mixed until I found the color that I wanted. It's easier if you're looking for solid colors, but sometimes it's fun to just mix paint anyways. Next, you're going to add some water to your paint mixture. Try not to make it super runny, but also not super thick. You want just the right amount so you can paint your ears. Now just go through and paint on layers on your ears. Occasionally I will go through and take a wire dog brush and brush out the fibers. I find the wire dog brush works better than just using regular brushes because it kind of takes out hairs as it would on a dog. And I also use a toothbrush just to try and get through the spots that usually end up white. Also make sure to paint the backside because those little furs sometimes get overlooked, but you don't want some white furs. And just brush through it again until it's good. And repeat the step with your other ear. Now I let them dry overnight because it's easier than using a hairdryer, but now we're just going to brush through them. So I find that using the wire dog brush will strip acrylics out of it, which is kind of what we're going for because it makes it super soft and fluffy again. Because you don't want a crusty, hard ear. That sounds weird. And probably wouldn't look as good. I'm also going to use an actual brush, as well as brush out backwards and down different fibers so that you can get rid of all the little crusty parts and make sure that your ear is super fluffy. You can definitely tell the difference in doing this, so make sure to do the other ear, and then we're going to take our inside the ears, which I left white, and we're going to lay them on top of each other. Make sure you have wrong way facing outward, and then we're just going to pin on the inside line so that we can sew next. Welcome to my sewing machine. Here I'm just going to use a little zigzag stitch because it's easier to get the fibers out when you're finished sewing. And I'm just going to sew along the lines, making sure to backstitch so you don't have problems later. Also make sure to trim your tails. Just proper advice. Next, I'm going to turn my ear inside out, or I guess in this case outside in. And I'm going to brush out the fibers from the stitch to make sure they didn't get caught. This is why I like using a zigzag stitch. It's easier to brush the fibers out rather than a straight stitch. You can also use a needle or something pokey and just get them out that way. I'm also going to trim down the excess inside once I brush the furs out so that it's not super bulky when you turn the ear back out again. Once I reversed the ear again, I kind of just played around with folding it to make sure it was how I wanted. And I also stuffed the tortilla chip inside to make sure it fit correctly. You might have to trim it down a little later, which is what I did too. Next, I'm going to cut out some wire the length of my foam. I ended up doubling this wire later because it wasn't strong enough to really bend the ear how I wanted. So make sure to use a little thicker wire just so you get your desired shape. Now I'm going to use hot glue to glue the wire in place. Make sure, of course, when you're working with hot glue and wire that you have something to hold the wire down. I just use a plastic spoon because I burnt my finger way too much doing this. Repeat for the other side. And now we're going to stick our tortilla chips of foam into our ear. I ended up trimming it down a little bit because I wasn't happy with the shape and it kind of stuck out a little too much. And then I'm going to glue down the fur on the inside to the end of the foam. Now I'm just going to fold the foam until I get the desired shape. Also make sure to hold it up to your head to measure if it's good or if it needs to be bent a little more. And I'm just going to do it to the other side, doing the same thing and trimming it down because I forgot, and then gluing the ends together with the foam. Now I'm going to bend the ear into place and then I will try them on to make sure they look good. Now that the foam and fur is glued together, I'm going to single out some tufts of fur to make sure I don't cut them. It depends on what animal you're going for because different animals have different shapes. I usually like to leave some tufts of fur on the inside of the ear and the outsides. And then the rest I'm just going to shave down with some scissors just so it's easier to shape later. Next, you're going to shave your fur down flat. Make sure to leave tufts of hair out, usually on the corners to make it more realistic. I use a dog shaver for this. I find it's easier sometimes than using a shaver for like a beard or whatever. I don't know. I guess because you're supposed to use it on fur. I'm not sure, but it works well. I also just don't have any other shavers, so this will do. Now you should have two shaved ears that are already starting to look a little more realistic. Now here's the fun part. I'm going to use eyeshadow and just sort of shade in green and different colors onto the ear. I incorporated the green onto the white part and then I kind of brushed it out with my fingers. It depends, of course, on the ear you're making, but I find eyeshadow just kind of works best, especially if it's super pigmented. I like to go down the fold of the ear and just add a brown or pink, usually depending on what color ear, of course, you have. And then I just kind of spread it out with my fingers. I find it gives it a little more realistic look and adds some shading and depth that you need. Don't be afraid to play around with the colors and just kind of have fun with it. I find that usually I'll just randomly add colors and I end up liking it. Sometimes, of course. And when I think I've added enough color, I'll go in and just add some sparkles to make it really shine. Now I'm going to be adding some more color. I'm going to use some chalk as some highlights to add white to it. And I've also found that using soft pastels really do well. Here I'm just going to use some greens and just add to the ear because I don't have a lot of green eyeshadow, so this worked way better. And finally, also adding some white pastel for some more highlights on the front. Now, of course, this step you can skip. I'm just me and I gotta keep to my brand. So I add a bunch of glitter on the inside and the back of the ear. I just like the extra sparkle and it's kind of fun, honestly. I love glitter way too much. It's a problem. This part is also optional, but I like to usually add some beads or some little charms just to personalize it and make it really cute. Since I was going for a nature theme with these ears, I thought about adding little mushrooms and flowers to the ends and outer corners of my ear, and I just kind of liked the idea, so I stuck with it. I also usually just add little pearls to replicate earrings. It just adds a cute little touch. And just to glue these on, it's kind of easy. Just use hot glue. You can probably use other types of glue. I just lazy and hot glue works best. Now for me, there's no such thing as too much, so I just kept adding until I found I was happy. And since these ears were kind of a forest themed, I wanted it to actually look like a little forest with some butterflies and flowers, so there was no such thing as too much. I also quickly just placed the ears on my head to make sure I was happy with them. There's many different options for attaching these ears. You can use little clips, or you can use magnets, which I've used before with Warbler, or you can use a headband. These were like 99 cents, and I find they work really well when placing it on a wig. So you just start from the back of the ear and you just wrap around, placing your needle through it. I found a fun little hack when you lose your thimble is just place a band-aid on your hand and use the band-aid to press the needle through. I don't know why it works. It does. I keep losing my thimble. Someone help. I also didn't want you guys to think I suddenly stabbed myself with the needle. I just lost my thimble and this is easy for me. Just continue to pierce the needle through the ear and back around under the hairband and tie it off at the knot at the end so it doesn't come loose. And just repeat the step with the other side until you're done. Once you're finished sewing, now you'll just have a cute little set of ears for cosplay. And here's the finished ears. I think they turned out super cute. if you guys decide to make your own set of ears, please tag me on social media, whether that be tagging me in your Instagram story or tweeting at me. I'd love to see your creations and what you make. But thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a magical day.